Hello, everyone. This is Sweet Lou, Jeff Luzada for HoosierAuthority.com with another edition of Lafayette Living Legends. And we're here with Mr. Mike DeBoy. Mike's a coach, and he also works for the athlete as a sales rep, but he also does a lot of officiating. And, Mike, I really appreciate your time. Kind of a snowy day here today, but not enough to maybe keep us from work. But let's talk a little bit about your career, both at Lafayette Jeff and presently what you're doing as far as athletics. You're a graduate of what high school?
I went to Lafayette Jeff.
And were you an athlete at Lafayette Jeff? And if you were, what sports did you participate?
I was a track and cross-country guy, very average at best.
Well, does that mean you made the team?
Of course. Yep.
So when you say average, I mean you weren't somebody that stood out, but yet enough to make the team, and then you had a good time at it, and you wanted to continue. Correct?
Correct. It was cross country's a good sport. Anybody from around this area knows Coach Hurt. What a great coach he was, and very influential in my life, and it was just a great experience for me.
I know a lot of people. I talked to Dave Howe quite a bit, and Phil Hurt was somebody that kind of had an influence over the way he is in life today. Would you contest to that? I
would agree totally, Jeff. He's a great man, great coach, and really shaped my life. Means an awful lot to me. Coach Hurt does.
Well, then, as far as being an athlete at Lafayette Jeff, you obviously knew the officiating was going on at some of those. Can you tell us how you got involved in becoming an official?
Well, after I graduated from Jeff, I went to Indiana University. And Dave Howell, actually, who we just mentioned, said, hey, you ought to get your referee's license. Great way to make a little cash, part-time job while you're in school. And that's how it started. And I've just kind of got my baseball license as well, and started umpiring baseball in the summers when I was in college, and then working basketball during the school year at IU. So that's kind of how I got started.
Now, when you did get started, is there any official off the top of your head, and I know you've worked with a lot of officials, but are there some officials that may have influenced you to say, hey, Mike, you've really got a future here. You ought to apply for the tournament, and you got a good shot to move into tournament officiating?
Pretty much the two guys from around here. I mean, Dave Howe got me involved, told me to get interested. And two of the older guys I really looked up to in baseballs when I really kind of got my varsity start was Bob Ritchie and Dick Van Arsdale. And they were two very good umpires. Bob Ritchie also works football, and those two kind of inspired me to stay after it and to become fairly decent at it.
Well, when you say fairly decent, obviously with the tournament assignments you've got in baseball, and tell us a little bit about that. How many tournaments, state tournaments you've worked in your career?
I've been lucky enough, Jeff. I worked 4 state finals in baseball. First one was in 1995, which it's kind of unique. Is in 95 it was still one class, and so I worked in Busch Stadium, and then in 99. I got to work at Victory Field, and then 2002 again at Victory Field, and then 2005, my last one, was at Loeb Stadium. So I've kind of covered all the venues for baseball, and just very exciting, very exciting.
So in all those 4 years, I know I mentioned off camera to you we were going to talk about, do you remember some players, do you remember some officials that you really enjoyed? I'm sure you enjoyed all 4 of them, but there's any of those 4, is anything that really stood out, or is any players that you can recall that really stood out in those 4 years that you did do the state finals?
Not really any real memorable. All the guys I worked with were great guys. I remember my first state finals, probably remember that the most, was in 95. And I worked with a couple gentlemen there, Gene Butts, who ended up just not too long ago. I think 05 was like his 10th or 11th state finals, and Dick Watkins, who's worked 7 or 8, and they knew I was the new guy and kind of took me under their wing, and we've kind of, Dick Watkins and I have kind of stayed in touch. He lives in Terre Haute, and we've worked some college baseball together. So those two guys, and that being my first state finals, was pretty memorable. And Lafayette Harrison won the state finals that year that I happened to be there. So the championship game, I was on the left field line, but pretty good view of the game from there, you know. So.
Well, you mentioned about the positions. Can you tell us the positions at the state finals that you worked? You said here in '95 you were at the left field line. The other three, do you remember the positions you umpired?
Well, in '95 it was a 3-game state finals. You worked the 2 morning games, and then the winners played at night. So in the morning I had second base first game, first base the second game, and then I had the left field line for the championship. And then in '99 I had the 2A game between Jimtown and Miter Day behind the plate. Got to be the crew chief for that game. And then '99 was a 2-day format. You know how they've changed the formats, where Friday night we worked at Noblesville, and I had to plate the first game, and then worked first the second game, and then for the championship at Victory Field worked second base, and then the championship game in '05 I worked first base. So pretty much covered all the bases, so to speak. So
after working those, I mean, maybe after your first state championship, you said, "Hey, this is pretty cool." Did you work any college after that, or when did you step into college ball?
I actually went to umpire school in 1987, the Joe Brinkman umpire school. I kind of wanted to be a major league umpire. Wasn't quite good enough to work that, but from 87 to 95, I worked a lot of small college baseball for Eric Harmon, and he was very influential in getting me started in working small college baseball. Worked some Purdue games, et cetera, et cetera. So I pretty much worked the high school after I was done working the college thing. So, yeah. And
then you're doing some coaching right now. I know you got a couple of sports. Kind of man of a few hats here. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the spring and fall and in the wintertime, Mike.
Well, in fall I coach cross country. Obviously, I ran in high school, and it was a great sport for me, so I still coach at Tecumseh Middle School, which I've done for since the mid-'80s, and very involved with that program, helping Coach Hurt and Coach Hal, because I think very highly of them. And then my kids had gone through Central Catholic. One of them's through Central Catholic, one of them there now. I coach middle school basketball, 7th grade, and then I'm the varsity track coach at Central Catholic. So a little bit of everything, jack of all trades, master of none, isn't that what they say?
So as far as your umpiring, I mean, I'm sure, and of course I've been an umpire too. Everybody kind of said, "Hey, Mike, you know, to really move up here, you got to pick somebody out that you can kind of be your mentor a little bit, but then you have to do your own thing." Would you basically say that to a young official now, that you basically follow the way somebody's doing things and then separate those things out and do your own thing, correct?
I think you're exactly right. I think you kind of fall in love with it, you know. You watched a ball game, and I'm watching the umpires as opposed to watching how the game's played, and you kind of pick bits and pieces, people you try to emulate, and then, of course, rules knowledge. You just kind of put your nose in the book and learn those things, but kind of develop your own style. Yep.
And then you'd probably say the same or agree the same thing that I'm about to say, that the money's probably down the line 2 or 3 times. You're basically in love with the game. And then another thing, too, and I'm sure when you've been in the upper echelon of the state finals, probably the bottom